Ti hei Māori ora. Whakarungo. Whakarungo ki te tangi o ta manu e karanga nei. Tui. Tui e runga, tui e rau, tui e roto, tui e waho. Tui e te hekenga tāngata. E waiki nui, he waiki ro, he waiki pāmamau. I hono ki te wairu, ki te whai au. Ki te ao marama. Ti hei Māori ora. Ti hei Māori mate. Ara ki te tangianga o te wā. I tō tātou nei kingi tū heitia po tātou te whero, tua whitu. E takoto mai i tōna marae o tūranga waiwa. Nā reira, e tā rangatira. Aha kōkua hinga e kore e ware ki tō kōrero motu hake ara ki te kotahitanga o te iwi katoa o Aotearoa. Wena te me nui o tēnei wā ara ki te kotahitanga. Arera, he tā rangatira, moi mai rā. Aere marunga nei i tō waka. Tō waka tapu ki a waiki nui, ki waiki ro, ki waiki pāmamo. Ono ki te wairu, ki te whaiao, ki te ao marama. He tā rangatira, e moi mai rā. I maumahara, i te tangihanga nei o te kaimahi, o tēnei kaunihera, i te wiki nei a Kate. Me tō whānau hoki, ka nui te mihi, ka nui te aroha. Nā reira, mati atua, koutou e manaki, he te aki, e arahi roto tōna rangi Māoria. I tēnei rā, me ngā rā e heke mai nei. Ngā mihi hoki. Nā reira, apiti hono rātai, apiti hono tātai hono. Rātou te honga matkia, rātou moi mai rā. Apiti hono tātai hono, tātou te kanohi ora, kia tātou ko hu mai nei. A tēnā koutou, huri noto, kia ora tātou katoa.
Kia ora.
E te whānau nei, o tēnei committee. Ngā member o tēnā tai whenua. Mai te wairo o pupu o nenge, matangi rau. Taino atu ki tamate ara ki nui o te waka takitungu. E he mai ki heretanga, ararau, hauka nui, te haro te kāhui. O te kāhu, te tangata takato noa. O tai mai nei i te whanga nui a rotu, a ki ahuriri. A tēnā koutou katoa. Ngā kai mahi hoki o tēnei kauni hera arohe, te matau o Māui. Ka nui te mihi ki o koutou, mō koutou mahi o tu hake. Ki tō tātou nei iwi o Ngāti Kāngunu. Areira o taku kōrero i tēnei wā, ka nui te mihi, ka nui te aroha, a tēnā koutou, huri no, kia ora tātou.
Ka tū i tautoko te whakamihi ki a mātou tātou i pā mai ki a koe te rangatira e api. E mahi maha ku ki a timata tēnei wāhanga, te committee, Māori Standing Committee, te kaunihera, te mata Māui, me te karakia. Kei ino i tātou. Tūtawa mai runga, tūtawa mai raro. Tūtawa mai roto, tūtawa mai waho. Kia tū te Māori ora ko ngā mea katoa. Tēnā koutou e tō mātou matu i te rangi. Tāne nui a rangi, tāne whakapiripiri whakarongo mai. Nau i wehi a ngā matu nau ko te au, nau ko te pō. Nau i tiki tēnei te wānanga whiriwhiri kōrero kei wainganui a mātou, nau ko te wānanga nei. Nau i pupuri te hauora, Nau I a hau, nau I a hau, tātou ki a tātou, haumi e hui e.
Te tātou, e honore.
Te gloria maunaro ki te whenua. Tākaro, ai mai e ki ngā tāngata katoa. Ake ake, ake ake, aami. Kia tua, te rina, tōku oranga. E gloria maunaro ki te whenua. Tākaro, ai e ki ngā tāngata katoa. Ake ake, ake ake, aami. Te atua, te pirina, tōku oranga. Tōku oranga.
Mauri ora tātou. Ko te tikanga o tēnei waita, o nore kororia ki te atua, honour and glory to God. Maunga rongo ki te whenua, peace on earth, whakaro pai ki ngā tāngata katoa, goodwill to all mankind. Mauri ora.
Tēnā koe api, mō tō e mihi tūwhera tātou wānanga i tēnei ata. Me mihi hoki ki a koe Māori, hi tuka e tūwhera i te kupu o te atua, e whakamoimiti, te hui ngai i tēnei wā. Nō reira, nō mahara mai ki a koutou katoa, ngā member o tātou committee, nā kaimahi o tātou kaunihera, tamatawa Māui, me a tātou kai kaunihera, ki a koe Madam Chairmana, me Councillor Hokianga, Councillor Lambert, Councillor Foley, and of course our lovely Councillor Sears.
Thank you.
No, my
Kia ora.
That's not to take anything away from the rest of you, but hey,
I'll take it.
so just for those in the room who are attending today, we've already had a 2-hour workshop this morning. So hopefully, I think ko pautahau o tātou kōrero i tēnei rā, but hey, we'll find out. So hopefully we've kind of talked ourselves out, but we'll see how the meeting progresses. So we're going to item 1. We've had our welcome karakia. Any notices on apologies, please?
Excuse me.
Apologies?
Kia ora, I've got apologies from Baden Barber, Roger Maka, Katarina Kawana and Peter Eden.
Were there any other apologies? Can I have a move and a said posaki wapi? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Carried. We have a short-term appointment,
Yes, we do.
and that is Ana Tawhaiti for Uncle Hami Hilton. Move Māori Apatu,
Yes.
seconded Polder Kelly. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Carried. Conflicts of interest? I take it there is none. So informational minutes of the Māori Committee held on the 21st of August 2024. So they have been out for some time. And the 5th of June. If there weren't any omissions, corrections or matters arising. So can I deal with the 5th of June first? Remembering that you needed to have been present. Did you have something to write it to rise?
I had seen just a couple of minor amendments, certainly. So,
Yes, kia ora. I did have an amendment because we had accidentally recorded Hami
Hilton.
as being present, but Anna was present. So I've made that correction to the minutes.
kia ora.
Thank you.
If there are no further omissions or amendments, I'm looking for a move and a seconder, please. Thank you, Anna. Henare, I think you were here. Yes, I thought so. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you, carried. So now we're coming to the 21st of August, which remembers our special Māori committee, which was just last week. Once again, looking for amendments, submissions, or matters arising. If there are none, I'm looking for, once again, a move and a second from those that were present.
Just a small one, Mr. Chair, just next to my name should be Wairo. Thank you.
Top right. There's no further. Can I ask, Api, are you happy to move? Councillor Lambert?
Yes.
Thank you. There's no further comment. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Carried. Call for minor items, not on the agenda. Happy to move forward. Item 5. Coming to our first report. Coastal and river bird survey findings. So thank you. Can I ask our presenters to come forward?
Kia ora, ko Becky Shanahan toku ingoa. I'm the team leader for the freshwater and marine team, so I help support the survey, but Annabelle's going to do a bit more of an introduction in just a moment. I just wanted to introduce who I am, and I'll be here to answer questions afterwards about the programs we do for the coast, if you have questions.
Atamaria ko Annabelle Beatty toku ingoa. Hi, my name's Annabelle and I'm the biodiversity team leader. So this work that Nikki will speak to feeds into a lot of different parts of work at council. Better understanding these really significant bird populations helps our asset management section to avoid and minimise any adverse impacts of flood management activities. It helps inform our operational biodiversity programs, and it also feeds into our policy team. So some of these species will be considered freshwater dependent threatened species under the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management, as well as highly mobile fauna and potentially taonga species in the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity. So thanks everybody for the opportunity today to share these results, and thanks to the other parts of council, particularly asset management, who helped fund the river survey, and our science section who funded the coastal survey. And here's Nikki to speak to the results.
Kia ora everyone, thanks again for the opportunity to come and speak to you today about this. So this talk's going to focus on some of the things we've learned about the impacts that Cyclone Gabrielle has had on the river and coastal birds of Hawke's Bay. There has been some significant impacts that we thought would be important for you to hear about. So just to provide you with a little bit more context, as many of you will know, Hawke's Bay's braided rivers and coastline supports a really high diversity of Indigenous bird species. We've been carrying out detailed surveys in these habitats since 2019, and over that time we've recorded 67 bird species inhabiting the region's 3 main braided rivers, the two Taikuri, Ngāruroro and Tukituki rivers. And we recorded a further 79 species inhabiting the Hawke's Bay coastline as well, so very high diversity in these habitats. And among these species, these habitats support nationally and globally significant breeding populations. So for example, we now know from these surveys that the Hawke's Bay region supports 13% of the national and global breeding population of pohowera, a banded dotterel. The Hawke's Bay supports around half of the national population of black-fronted dotterels. We support all of the North Island breeding population of tōrea, South Island pied oyster catchers, and we also support around 9% of the national and global breeding population of tūturi whatu, the New Zealand dotterel. So some really important populations here in Hawke's Bay. These are some of the things we learned from the surveys we did prior to Cyclone Gabrielle. Then, of course, along came this incredibly severe weather event that we had in February 2023. And, of course, you will all know just what a devastating impact that's had on our region, including, you know, our property, our infrastructure, obviously some tragic loss of life as well here in Hawke's Bay. But it also won't be lost on many of you that this extreme weather event had quite severe impacts on our rivers and our coastlines as well, in particular the natural ecosystems in those two habitats. And so in the aftermath of Cyclone Gabrielle, Hawke's Bay Regional Council realised that they were sitting on a pretty unique opportunity to go out and measure for the first time in quite a high degree of detail what the impact this cyclone has had on Indigenous bird populations in these two habitats, owing to the existence of these detailed surveys that we did in the years prior to Cyclone Gabrielle. Not only is that of enormous use to the council and to this region, because it means that if we can measure what impact this cyclone has had on these bird populations, we can differentiate those impacts from the impacts of other human activities on these habitats going forward. So the impacts of, for example, flood management activities on these rivers can be teased out from these cyclone impacts. Taking a broader view, this is also the first opportunity we've had in New Zealand to measure the impacts of an extreme weather event on Indigenous bird populations at the catchment and regional scale. No one's ever had this opportunity to do this before, and so bigger picture, that gives us some insight into the vulnerability of these species to human-induced climate change, which is obviously the big pressure that's looming on our horizon now. So just to give you a quick overview of our methods, between 2019 and 2023, we carried out 4 surveys along 292 kilometres of the Tutaikuri, Ngāruroro and Tukituki rivers. And we carried out 2 surveys along 321 kilometres of the Hawke's Bay coastline. These surveys involved a team of around 10 people basically walking the entire length of these rivers and this coastline over a fairly short period of time, counting every single bird that they encountered within each roughly 1 kilometre section of river and coast that was traversed. So it was a huge job to do this survey, and a great deal of care was taken by these survey teams to make sure that we weren't either missing birds in these habitats or double counting them. So there was a lot of sort of detail to the methodology that we followed to make sure that the counts that we came up with were close to the true population sizes of the species that inhabit these habitats. So just to jump into some of the key results, we found that around half a dozen of some of our more threatened bird species have been quite severely impacted by Cyclone Gabrielle. For example, we found that pohowera numbers have declined by 15% on our 3 big braided rivers, and they've also declined by 31% along the Hawke's Bay coastline as a result of the cyclone. Pohowera are restricted to these 2 habitats in the Hawke's Bay region. They only breed on the rivers or the coastline. So putting these 2 surveys together, we can report that the Hawke's Bay region has suffered a 17% decline in the regional breeding population of this species. And what's more, because we know this region supports about 13% of the national and global population of this species, This 17% decline we've seen in Hawke's Bay equates to a 2.5% decline in the national and global population of pohowera, which is a major hit that this species has taken. Just to put that into context, prior to Cyclone Gabrielle, national monitoring of the species was showing that the species was declining by about 1.4% per annum across New Zealand, and that is cause for substantial concern. Well, that's been overshadowed by this 2.5% decline that's been triggered by one weather event in one region. So that gives you some sense of just what a catastrophe this has been for the species. In saying that, I do have to say that one thing we don't know from this survey is whether this decline has been caused by mortality, by birds perishing during the cyclone or in its aftermath, or by birds moving out of these river and coastal habitats and out of the Hawke's Bay region. If it's the latter, it's not quite as much of a bad news story than if it was the former. But unfortunately, I think balance of probability, we're probably looking at this being mainly due to cyclone-related mortality. The reason for that being is that we know from previous work done on the species that pohowera are pretty site-faithful to their breeding habitats. We just don't see big chunks of regional breeding populations up moving and relocating to other regions as a result of events like these. So we're thinking this is probably a mortality event rather than just a change in habitat use. In saying that, another interesting kind of quirk with this result is that if it has been cyclone-related mortality, it probably didn't actually happen on our Hawke's Bay rivers. The reason for that is that banded dotterels, once they finish breeding each year, they migrate off these rivers and spend their winter months at coastal sites in Hawke's Bay and further north in the North Island at sites in the Bay of Plenty and around Auckland and the Coromandel. So if these birds did perish during the cyclone, it probably actually occurred at these wintering sites, not on Hawke's Bay rivers, or this mortality has occurred over a longer time period as these birds have returned to these rivers, which have been quite badly disturbed by the cyclone. And probably the most likely mechanism for that would be a disruption to their food supply, which has affected their survival rates in the months after the cyclone. We don't know what's happened for sure, but balance of probability is probably one of those two scenarios.
Through you, Chair, can I ask a question as
Yes.
we go? Is that all right?
Yep.
Did you show on the map how far their coastal environment is? Do they come right up round the Cape Kidnappers Point and
I'll show you a map.
You'll show us
The next slide will show that actually, yeah, so we'll get to that very soon. So this map here shows the distribution of pohowera on Hawke's Bay rivers pre and post cyclone. So each dot on the map represents a local population of pohowera, and they're colour coded according to whether that local population has increased or declined following the cyclone. So red and orange dots on the map are declines, local declines in pohowera densities, and green and yellow are increases in numbers. So as you can see, there's a lot of red and orange on the Tutaikuri and Ngāruaroa rivers. Pohowera numbers have halved on the Tutaikuri river, followed Cyclone Gabrielle, and we've seen about a 20% reduction in numbers on the Ngāruaroa river. Numbers are stable on the Tukituki River, but there's been some local declines offset by some local increases on that catchment. So it looks like there's been a bit of a movement of birds throughout that catchment. The declines that we've seen on the two northern rivers are the steepest population declines we've ever recorded for this species in Hawke's Bay, and we've got count data going back as far as 1962 for these rivers. So it's an event of historic proportions that we've observed.
Just before you move out of it, so looking at the graph, it's quite obvious that there was proportions of our waterways that were more severely impacted than others.
Yeah.
And other water, so I look at the thing Tutaikuri there, and you know, it's virtually the whole length of it was affected. And as we think back, we had a lot more debris coming down the thing Tutaikuri compared to the Ngāruaroa and to the Tukituki. So
that's right.
Do we think those things have impacted?
Absolutely, yeah. The patterns we've seen in the where the local declines are, broadly they seem to correlate where most of the most severe physical damage was done. So the parts of the catchments that were more badly affected by woody debris and the deposition of those deep beds of silt that we saw as well. So no surprises there really, that the rivers that have had the greatest disturbance are the sites we've seen the greatest declines in bird numbers.
So where we saw the increase in population, I'm just trying to look for the measurement in here about how much they've increased, if you like.
Not sure. So there have been some, as you see on the map, there's some local increases in some parts of the catchments, which are probably due to birds relocating within catchments. There's been a certain amount of birds moving around and relocating on less disturbed sections of river. But those local increases don't come close to offsetting the declines elsewhere. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So here's what that looks like on the coastline. So as you can see on this map, Pohowera are more patchily distributed along the coast. They were pre-cyclone as well. But you can see some quite, well, it's not quite so obvious as the river map perhaps, but we've had some quite severe declines in the vicinity of the Wairoa River mouth, again correlated with the really heavy impacts that we saw along that section of coast. And one really sad result is that we also saw some quite severe declines along the Napier foreshore between Napier and Hamoana. That was really gutting to me because, as some of you will be aware, there's a community conservation group now active at Hamoana trying to actively manage Pohowera along that section of the coastline, and these local declines badly undermine those efforts, which is a really sad result to see. On to the next species. So this is the black-fronted dotterel. This is another dotterel species which is actually more or less restricted to the river habitats in Hawke's Bay. There's a few birds breeding along the coastline, but very low numbers. For our purposes, they're more or less restricted to the rivers. We recorded a 30% decline in numbers in the species across the 3 river catchments. As I mentioned earlier, Hawke's Bay is a real stronghold for this species. Half of the black-fronted dotterels that breed in New Zealand occur in these 3 river catchments. So this 30% decline equates to a 15 to 17% decline in our national population of this species. Unlike the Pohowera, black-fronted dotterels don't migrate off these rivers during the non-breeding season, so they would have been present on these rivers when Cyclone Gabrielle hit us, So it's most likely that this decline has been caused by mortality that's occurred on these rivers as a result of, or either during Cyclone Gabrielle or in the weeks or months following as a result of the major upheaval to these habitats. And here's what their distribution map looks like. You can see a lot of red and orange on that map. So black-fronted dotterels decline throughout the entire length of all 3 catchments, including the Tuki River catchment. So a 38% decline on the Tutaikuri, 32% decline on the Ngāruroro, and 27% decline on the Tuki River. And again, these are the largest declines we've ever observed on these rivers. And again, our surveys for the species go back to 1962 as well. So again, pretty major catastrophe for this species. Pouaka is another significant shorebird present on our rivers and coastline. They've also been quite badly affected, so we've had a 16% decline in their numbers on the rivers and a 34% decline along the coastline. It's much less clear to me, though, whether this is due to mortality or just birds moving and changing their habitat use. The reason for this is that pouaka aren't just restricted to our river and coastal habitats in Hawke's Bay. They also occur on farmland and in wetlands and on ponds and lakes. So there's more of a potential that this decline is simply a result of birds moving off our rivers and coast and relocating to more terrestrial habitats in response to this disturbance that's occurred. So I hope that's the case, because that's not quite as catastrophic as if we've actually lost a big chunk of our breeding population. Similar story for the torea. So as I mentioned earlier, our 3 Hawke's Bay rivers support the only breeding population of this species in the North Island. The majority of the species breeds on the South Island braided rivers. And we've detected a 43% decline, so an almost halving in the number of birds that breed here in Hawke's Bay. Prior to Cyclone Gabrielle, it's a small population anyway, so prior to Cyclone Gabrielle we recorded an average of 46 birds breeding on our braided rivers. That's declined to 26 birds following the cyclone. Again, it's not very clear to me whether this is mortality or a change in habitat use. We've got very little, we've got no information about whether these birds stay on Hawke's Bay rivers year round or whether they migrate to coastal sites. They're very mobile species. The South Island birds migrate up to Auckland and Northland for their wintry months and then back down to the South Islands. It's possible our Hawke's Bay birds were elsewhere when Cyclone Gabrielle hit. So again, I hope it's just a change in habitat use and not a mortality event, but nonetheless, obviously a fairly severe impact on their numbers in the short term. This is another really sad result for me anyway. The Tūturi Whatu, the northern New Zealand dockerel, was a real success story in Hawke's Bay prior to Cyclone Gabrielle. This species was driven locally extinct sometime fairly early in the 19th century in Hawke's Bay and was absent from Hawke's Bay for most of the 19th and 20th centuries. But we had this really positive sort of event with the species recolonising Hawke's Bay in 1990. A pair turned up at Mahia Peninsula and began breeding. And over the next 2 or 3 decades, this species went through this really impressive recolonisation event. To the extent that in 2021, when we surveyed the coastline, we counted a population of 222 breeding adults. So a phenomenal kind of success story, largely driven probably by the conservation management that's been done on the species in the northern North Island, in conjunction with some of the work that's been done here in Hawke's Bay in recent decades as well. But unfortunately, they've taken quite a major hit too. As a result of the cyclone, we've recorded a 36% decline in their numbers, from the 222 birds counted in 2021 to just 142 birds counted this summer. And that equates to about a 3% decline in their national and global population. Again, I suspect on balance probability, this is more likely to be a mortality event than a change in habitat use. These birds are restricted to the coastline, so it's not as if they've moved to some other habitat in Hawke's Bay that we're not aware of, and they're pretty faithful to their breeding sites as well. So it's hard to see how, the sort of 80 birds that we're now missing from Hawke's Bay have just upsticked and moved to another part of the North Island. Here's the distribution map for that species, patchily distributed along the entire coastline, and we saw local declines along the entire length of the coastline, so they seem to be affected right the way along. I'll just skip over that slide, and I think you're probably keen to hear some better news now from this presentation. So on the other side of the ledger, we do have some good news to share with you, and that is that quite a large number of our coastal bird species do seem to have come through the cyclone unscathed, which was actually a surprising result to me. These are some species which I would have assumed would be quite vulnerable to these extreme weather events. One group of birds that came through really well is our Arctic breeding migrants. So the 2 birds in the top and middle left there, the kuaka, the bar-tailed godwit, and the ruddy turnstone, the one in the middle there. These remarkable birds, they don't breed in New Zealand, they breed in the high Arctic and Alaska and eastern Russia, and do these incredible annual migrations down to New Zealand for the southern hemisphere summer each year. Numbers of these birds in Hawke's Bay were virtually identical both pre and post cyclone, which was extremely pleasing to see. So they've come through relatively unscathed. Possibly due to good luck more than anything else. Had the cyclone come through any later or any earlier in the season, I suspect these birds would have been quite severely impacted. If the cyclone had hit when they were migrating to and from New Zealand, that could have been quite catastrophic for them. Or had it hit immediately after these birds had arrived in New Zealand, I suspect they would have been quite badly impacted too, because in the weeks following the arrival in New Zealand, they're basically just bags of bones, these birds, because they use up all their energy reserves getting here, and they spend the next few months here recouping all that energy and condition. So in February, they're basically as fat and as best condition as they possibly can in preparation for migration, and so just through a lack of timing, probably fairly well set up to weather the storm, so to speak. Another group of birds that came through really well were the gulls and terns, our resident gull and tern species. Again, counts are either remarkably similar pre and post cyclone, or in a couple of cases we did pick up what looked like fairly substantial declines in numbers for species like red-billed gulls, for example, tarapanga. But these declines that we did see were within what we normally see year to year for these species anyway. So their numbers do tend to fluctuate in Hawke's Bay quite a bit from year to year, usually because of the changes in the location and size of their breeding colonies, which changes from year to year. So the declines we did see post-cyclone weren't anything out of the ordinary, so not really major cause for concern, I don't think. Two other species I wanted to quickly mention was the bird in the bottom left-hand side there, the matuku moana. That's one of Hawke's Bay's rarest breeding bird species now. Pre and post-cyclone, we've recorded only 9 and 10 individual adult birds along the entire Hawke's Bay coastline. They're incredibly rare species, but their numbers were virtually unchanged following the cyclone, which was a real relief to see. Another bird that came through unscathed was the torea pango, the variable oyster catcher. Virtually identical numbers pre and post-cyclone, which was actually a real surprise to me because they've got very similar habitat requirements and nesting habitats to the tūturifatu. So given that we saw quite a dramatic decline in tūturifatu numbers, I was expecting to see this species taking quite a big hit as well. But they didn't. They came through virtually unscathed, which was a very positive result. So, yeah, I'm sure I've probably used up my time allocation now, so I just wanted to leave with just a couple of slides to sum up. So the big takeaway kind of learnings from these surveys were that we've demonstrated for the first time that extreme weather events can lead to some really serious declines in bird populations at the catchment and regional scale, both here in Hawke's Bay, but of course it provides an example of how vulnerable these species are anywhere in New Zealand to these extreme weather events. And unfortunately, given the predictions associated with the warming climate that we are going to be seeing over the next few decades, it just illustrates the high degree of vulnerability that some of these species have to the increase in storminess that we're going to get in association with the warming climate in the next few decades. On the flip side, it was really pleasing to see that many other species appeared to be fairly unaffected by Cyclone Gabrielle, but for at least some of them, that's probably down to, seems wrong to use the word luck and Cyclone Gabrielle in the same sentence, but the timing of this weather event was probably fairly fortunate for some of these species. It could have been a lot worse for them if this event had occurred at a different time of the year. And again, I just probably need to reiterate that for a number of these species, we're fairly uncertain whether these declines are a result of mortality or a change in habitat use. And this will have a bearing on the speed and the likelihood that these populations will recover in the future. If it was mortality that's driven these declines, it will take longer for these populations to rebuild their numbers back up again. If it's a change in habitat use, we'd probably expect to see numbers bounce back on our rivers and coastline as those habitats kind of stabilise and recover from the disturbance that they've experienced. But we don't know the answer to that question. So in terms of next steps, the obvious thing to do if we can is to repeat these surveys again in another 3 to 5 years to measure whether or not these populations have bounced back from this event and to what extent. Thinking about things longer term, the results of these surveys suggest that regional climate change adaptation plans and also our emergency response plans around these events need to include measures to mitigate the adverse impacts on river and coastal ecosystems and these indigenous bird populations. And some obvious sort of measures that could be taken include the careful management of woody debris inputs and removal from these habitats, obviously trying to minimise the quantity of woody debris that's washing up on our riverbeds and our coastlines would benefit these bird species, but also carefully managing the removal of that woody weed debris when it does get deposited. So one risk that the removal of that material poses is that if that occurs during the summer breeding season for these birds, the mechanical removal of that woody debris can also cause additional disturbance and destruction to nesting shorebirds too. Taking a sort of a medium to longer term approach, an obvious way for us to offset population declines that occur as a result of these extreme weather events is to carry out landscape scale predator control on our rivers and our coastline during years in which we don't get these extreme weather events, increasing the productivity of our shorebird populations in these non-storm years will help offset these losses when these weather events do come our way. And again, long-term planning, creating some artificial nesting and kind of flood refugia habitats beyond our river corridors and our coastlines to provide some sort of less flood-prone habitats for these birds would be quite a useful initiative to do and to build into our planning. And carefully managing our coastal defences and kind of coastal retreat policies to ensure that there's room for the landward migration of our coastal habitats over the next few decades will be a really important thing to try and achieve as well. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Thanks very much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions
Thank
you
you.
may have.
Like, questions?
Yeah, when you guys walk down the coast, are you taking drones and stuff?
No, we don't. We just walk it. I think. Well, we.
A lot of cliffs along there.
Yep, there were. Yep, yeah. No, there were some really gnarly bits, and we found that just walking the coastline and counting the birds from ground level gave us a better, more accurate count. Some of the species are quite, particularly the smaller species like pohawera, if they're sitting still on nests, I don't think we'd have a very good chance of detecting them from a drone high up. Walking the coastline and getting the birds to basically stand up and move, we found was the best way to detect them. So we just did the old-fashioned way. We just walked with binoculars and scopes and counted them all systematically as we went. And yeah, there's some bits of the coast I'm quite happy not to go back to. There were some really gnarly bits. Yeah, yeah.
Anna?
Oh, kia ora Niki. I had the opportunity actually through Ngā Hapu o Waimarama to be present on your coastline surveying, and that was in terms of access to Te Motu Okura, so that's your 2021. One of the requests I'd like to put forward, or recommendations as well, is in terms of the learning that came from that space was to be able to feed back to our whānau. And why I say that too, that's what building those relationships look like, but that also, when we're looking to build capacity within our own hapori, our whānau hapu, where the eyes and ears that are and the feet that are on the ground is the constant. And so if or when there's opportunity for our whānau to be a part of these as a learning exercise, it presents an opportunity to have, not the 3 to 5 years measure, but, it might just be the indicator that on the motu, this isn't present anymore. Maybe there's urgency to come and see what's happening in our backyard. But I really appreciate the mahi that's been done, really informative, and also being able to present some of the species that we're not familiar with in our own backyard. So I've learned something today, and we haven't even been out on the coastline or on the awa, so kia ora.
Thank you, Anna.
Māori?
Look, just to follow on from Anna, I've learned a few things about some of the Māori names associated to these birds. We do work particularly around the contributions that many parts of this ecosystem contribute towards the well-being. And of course, these become indicators. And I'm still trying to kind of connect that link in terms of what are these things. But good report, very useful information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Sophie says.
Kia ora, thank you, through you, Chair. Just to pick up on Anna's comment, I was at Biodiversity Forum and they were promoting the use of it, Find That Bird or Know That Bird, that app that you can join and you just pop in every day, what you see and where you see it, and it's a way of collecting. Could be something that we could connect for the region to that. They're already set up, there's a couple of platforms, but that could be a really neat way to be monitoring it through those times. So yeah, that's just a comment. But a question, or two questions. One, it would be nice to understand what DOC's roles or responsibilities are in around monitoring or protection in this. I'd just like to understand the Regional Council DOC relationship. And secondly, Cape Sanctuary at Ocean Beach, if because it's effectively slightly captive because they're closed in there, would they count it or not count it, or how does that interface with the data?
So I guess take the second question first. So we did count the Cape Sanctuary coastline. There's public access along there below the high tide mark, so we just walked through with their, contact them out of courtesy and obtained permission, but they were fine with that. They certainly, the Cape Sanctuary is a good example of, again, that point I made that it's not an easy job to do, but one obvious way we can offset the impacts of these extreme weather events is to roll out pest control on as large a scale as we can manage to increase productivity of these birds in other years. And that's, the Cape Sanctuary is an example of that. So, for example, the tūturifatu population along the Cape Sanctuary coastline appears to be enormously productive. We come across lots of nests and chicks along there as a result of it being virtually predator-free. And so in the years to come, that'll be one sort of section of coastline that'll be pumping out chicks to replace the birds that we've lost during Cyclone Gabrielle. So that's a role that those sorts of projects will play in helping to maintain the viability of our populations in the face of this obviously quite severe threat that they face from these extreme weather events. Taking your first question about the respective roles of DOC versus Regional Council, Annabelle or Becky might want to jump in, but brief comment from me. Broadly speaking, my understanding is DOC's role is more around threatened species management, whereas regional councils are more to do with the management of ecosystems and habitat. So the council have come at these surveys from kind of the management of these habitats and ecosystems, and of course the better they're managed, the better the threatened species will do. In theory, DOC should be managing the species themselves, but obviously, as you all know, they're pretty spread thin. DOC's spread pretty thin. And so within Hawke's Bay, I don't think there's an awful lot of active management of these threatened species in these two habitats going on, with the odd exceptions. So DOC, for example, does some fairly intensive management on Waikawa, Portland Island, for, I think it's also called the tūturifatu, the shore plover. And they've also done a little bit of sort of work supporting the community to manage the pohawera at Hamoana and at times as well. But my understanding is, there's not their prioritisation there's not a lot of active management going on of these threatened species from within the region from DOC's point of view. But I don't know if Becky or Annabelle want to comment further.
I'd support what Nikki has said there, but we are collaborating with DOC in this space. So they shared their data from Waikawa Island. Nikki and the team didn't walk that bit. And there are some particular species like black-billed gulls where they do more intensive management. But we're working together and I guess trying to plug each other's gaps to get the best out. Thank you.
We'll come to Diane and then coming to our final question from Councillor Hawke.
Kia ora tēnā koe te mana.
Annabelle, are you coming to me tomorrow?
I want to, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, we'll see you in the morning.
Okay.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock? Okay, yeah. And we really keen to share the results with any, we had hoped to have a series of hui, but we've had some logistical issues, so that hasn't happened. But please reach out. We really want to connect with anyone and share the results and knowledge both ways, because there's so much knowledge how locally.
Absolutely, yeah. You're hearing the news first. So this is the first sort of work we've done to share these results. We thought it was important to come here and share it with you first. But as Annabelle said, I'm also very open to coming along and presenting these results to any other groups in Hawke's Bay that are interested to learn about this work. We did a lot of that during following the previous coastal survey in 2021 as well, so very open to that. Actually, related to that, Anna, just worth mentioning that we're also in the process of updating a report about Motuokura Island with the results of that. We didn't land on the island this time, but we did go around it in a boat again, and we'll sort of revise and update the Motuokura report and send that your way very soon. So very happy to do as much sharing of what we've learned as people would like us to.
Did you count any of those power birds out there?
We're very serious, we're very focused. We try not to get distracted on our surveys.
Tēnā koe te hemana, o tira tēnā koe te pāpā te kō whaingutu kākā, tuku atu nā whakaaro ki runga ki tēnei ko te kaupapa ara, ia kere te ngāhuru ka ngāhuru no atu. Tai atu rā ki tō tātou nei pautonga me kine o te kupunga te huki ara atu ana ko ngā mahi ko mahi kētia nei. E pātai tāku he ono I mui tēnā, tēnei au ka tuku atu na whakaaro a kia kōrua tahi Annabelle e ki. Nā tau tā kōrua pūrongo e pāna ki a tātou me ki nei tātou tipua, tātou tawhito. Ko e nei ngā tipuna i tai mai i mua i te tāinga mai o tira tangata. Nō reira ka tika me whakatapu, me whakarangatira, me whakatipua i e nei o ngā manu, o tira manu. E pīkauhia nei i ngā kārere nōuki. Nō reira tēnā kōrua. Tēnā kōrua i tā koha mai i e nei whakamārama kia tātou. E nei whakamārama e pāna ki ngā nohonga o e nei manu o tātou. Nō reira tēnā kōrua, tēnā koutou ko tō tīma e whakahaerihia nei i e nei mahi ki te tiaki pai. I ngā rā o mua ki tā te tirohanga o te kāhui kaumātua ko ngā manu o ngā tini o te hakuturi oia rā ngā kaitiaki tūturu o te Māori. E hara o tātou ngā ira tangata. Rā atu ko ngā manu, rā ko ngā ika, ngā ahara, mea hara, ngā tini āhuatanga o ngā atua Māori. Nō reira tēnā koutou. Thank you for the report. Appreciate it. And just echoing the comments from previous speakers relating to, I guess, a better understanding of where our manu are at. But I just sort of note that in the last, I guess, comparison that you gave relating to the last manu that you described, is that there was almost, they were low in numbers prior to the cyclone and almost unchanged following the cyclone. And you used the comparison to another manu that I guess had the exact same needs in terms of habitat. So hypothetically, have you landed at what the difference was?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, great question, because I forgot to mention that. So this was the Torea Pango and the Tūturi Whatu, which at face value, they nest in the same places. They just nest on the ground on bare gravels and sand, and they live in very similar parts of the coastline, and they're both restricted virtually to coastal habitat. So yeah, why did one suffer so badly and one didn't? Well, I think the key difference is that Tūturi Whatu Torea Pango have a bit more flexibility during extreme weather events and at times when there's very high tides and storm surges on the coastline. Torea Pango appear to be quite happy and readily, they'll leave the coastline at times like that and quite happily roost on nearby pasture or sports fields, anywhere that's open. Even in the roofs of industrial buildings, they'll park up and roost until the weather or the storm surge or the high tide has passed, and they'll go back onto the beach. Tūturi Whatu never do that. They seem to be a lot more inflexible, and they're very reluctant to leave the foreshore. So I suspect that's the key difference there. That one difference in flexibility, I think, probably accounts for Torea Pango doing quite well, or weathering the storm quite well. They probably all ended up off the coast and just parked up in paddocks along the length of our coastline, and then returned to the coastline, as it was as things settled down. Whereas a Tūturi Whatu would have just sat there and taken the full force. The other possibly more minor difference is that Tūturi Whatu are largely restricted to sandy and shingle beaches, whereas Torea Pango are equally as happy along rocky shorelines as well. So on sandy and shingle beaches where we had all that woody debris wash ashore and basically stay put, Tūturi Whatu would have been quite badly affected in terms of a reduction in nesting habitat. They don't like nesting amongst driftwood. They like it to be bare ground and wide open. Torea Pango would have been pushed off those beaches as well, but more birds would probably be able to find sites on the rocky shorelines where that woody debris didn't tend to hang around as long. Either it didn't wash onto the at the bottom of cliffs, or if it did, it was washed back out to sea fairly quickly. So yeah, two key differences there that I mean it's just speculative, but I suspect that's probably what accounts for their differences.
You got pictures of those birds?
Yeah, if we go back. So the big picture in the middle there is a Torea Pango, the one that's come
Oh, yeah.
through relatively unscathed.
We've got some of those.
And this is the one that, on the face value, kind of nests in similar places, but did a lot worse. This is the Tūturi Whatu, the New
them.
Zealand doctorate. Yeah. Yeah. So these guys are a bit less flexible than in both in terms of nesting habitats and what they do and during storms.
Like Ngāti
These
Kere.
guys are.
Yeah, then we got two couples on a golf course. They're hard case, are you? You go, your ball goes over there and they're hard out trying to chase you away.
Yeah, they love golf. They'd even nest on a golf course if the grass is short enough. That's how flexible they are. So, yeah.
Sure. So just to Nikki, Annabelle, Bex, thank you very much for your report. I note that we are due for 2 further surveys between now and stretching out to 2029. We look with interest to receiving those further results and just to see what kind of impact we've had. Once we get right outside the influence of Cyclone Gabriel, and if we can start to see an increase in populations, especially those ones that have had the most, been impacted the most. So we look forward to that. So on behalf of the committee, nō reira, ngā mihi kia koutou. So thank you all very much for your input today.
Thank you.
So we're coming up to item 6, North Island Weather Events Flood Resilience Program. 15 minutes.
Annabelle.
O tira, through you, Chair, kei kuranga tira, the reason for today's report is to bring the North Island weather events, so the land categorisation flood resilience program, and the work that is being done with mana whenua to you today. Thank you.
Ka pai o morena anō koutou, tuatahi rā e tāpiri ana te mihi aroha kia rātou, te whānau pani o te kingitanga rātou hoki, Wainui Waikato, kua hinga, kua whiturangi tia tō tātou kingi, ki aia te rangatira moe rā, haere atu rā. Huri noa ki a koutou, ngā kanohi ora o te ao kiko, tēnā koutou katoa. Tā huri ki a koe, kōrua api, kōrua ko Mārei, nā kōrua i tuwhera tō tātou nei hui, tēnei ka mihi. Tā huri ki a koe te tiamana, Mike, tēnā koe, te tiamana o te kaunihira, koutou ngā kai kaunihira, koutou hoki ngā pau, ngā māngai o tērā taiwhinoa, o te mātua Māui, tēnā koutou katoa. Might just throw to our team to introduce ourselves and then get into our paper, if that's okay. Kia ora.
Atamarie, ko Sarah Cameron Toku Ingoa. I'm the Comms and Engagement Lead for the Infrastructure Program Management Office here at HBRC. So work with TK and John and the team on the planning and delivery of the flood infrastructure projects across the region.
Morena ana o koutou, ko tōku tūranga i tēnei rōpū, so my role with our rōpū is supporting the team and mana whenua engagement alongside our Māori partnerships team. Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou, ko Kawekas te Monga, ko Ngarororo te Awa, ko Ahuri Ahau, ko Kingsford Taku Whānau, ko John Taka Ingoa. I'm the Program Director for the Niue Land Category Program of Work and all capital delivery projects within Hawke's Bay Regional Council. And I have the privilege to work with Sarah and Te Kaha on this program of work.
Kia ora, any hard questions? Goes this way.
That way.
He's the linchpin of the kaupapa. Kia ora anō koutou. So we're here to present an update on the North Island weather events, or we call it NIWI, or Te Reo Niwe, resilient program, particularly focusing on the work of the Infrastructure Program Management Office, or the IPMO, and heaps of acronyms, NIWI, IPMO. So NIWI's the mahi that the council are undertaking to get from those Category 2C projects, which is where the OIC mahi sits, down to Category 1. So that's the NIWI or NIWI program, and the IPMO are the team that deliver that mahi. This update includes the progress we've made on various flood resilient projects across Te Matawa Māui, importantly how we engage with mana whenua in these projects. This report is meant to keep you informed and ensure we align with those efforts. So just going to go through the paper as it's read, but it's just going to briefly touch on some key points, and then might just throw it to the team as we go through, if there's any parts as we go. So a bit of background to the NIWI Resilience Program. As you may know, the Crown and the Kaunihira entered into a NIWI agreement last October, following Cyclone Gabriella. This agreement has enabled HBRC to secure significant funding for flood protection initiatives. These initiatives are critical for the safety and resilience of our communities, and they include upgrading pump stations, stop bank mahis, like we've mentioned with the Category 2C to 1 mahi, and other vital infrastructure mahi. In regards to mana whenua engagement, which I'm sure you're keen to hear about, one of the core aspects of our mahi is engaging with mana whenua. We have developed a comprehensive engagement framework and to ensure that mana whenua are engaged and supported in the decision-making of these projects. The values and mātauranga are woven into these projects also. The mātauranga engagement framework goes beyond the requirements of the OIC, or the Severe Weather Emergency Recovery Order 2024. It includes early and ongoing engagement with mana whenua, undertaking cultural impact assessments, formalising agreements like MOUs, and establishment of working groups, working alongside our project managers. Our goal is to build partnerships that respect and incorporate the mātauranga, the knowledge and aspirations of mana whenua throughout the project. Just moving into some specific updates. So some of these key projects, we have Waido with a $70 million project. So we're engaging closely with Tātou o Te Waido on that, and just kind of the most recent update in regards to Waido was working alongside that team in regards to delivering a cultural impact assessment for that mahi. Whirinaki project, working closely with Pētāne Marae in delivering or producing a CIA for that project, and we're working closely with kaitiaki on the ground, especially around there to Urupa, in and around Whirinaki area. And Waiōhiki, working alongside Waiōhiki Marae and Ngāti Pāro. CIA has already been delivered for that project, and working alongside the hapu representatives, moving into works that will start this year. Ohiti Road, working alongside Te Piringa Hapu. CIA has already been completed for those works and ongoing, and we've got a hui scheduled for the community mid this month. And then going into Pakowhai, we've identified cultural impact assessment riders for hapu marae within that area. An overview of our engagement process. In summary, each project has a designated mana whenua engagement lead, and we have made it a priority to include hapu and marae from the outset. So I think earlier this morning we talked about the phases of works. We've had the rapid rebuild of our stop banks. We've been working along hapu and marae that had been directly impacted. We've carried that over into the Category 2C mahi, which is this NIWI kaupapa, but then we also acknowledge and mindful of the bigger picture around reimagining our rivers that's come out of the the independent report and knowing that that's those conversations, you know, with the work that the Tai Whenua and the iwi have done in the past, and knowing that that's an important conversation that needs to be had. So just looking at those different phases of mahi and acknowledging that the wider conversation will be had. Ka pai. Looking ahead, over the next 6 months, we'll continue to deliver these critical flood resilient projects while maintaining and strengthening our partnerships with mana whenua, and just mentioning earlier before that there's still cultural impact assessments to be undertaken, and then we've also got MOUs to enter into with mana whenua groups, and those MOUs are kind of there to support with capability and capacity, where time can be remunerated for engagement in the project, which is separate to those CIAs. So we'll...
TK, can I just add there too, if that's okay? We have also received some government funding that allows us now to also increase resource and capability in the mana whenua space for engagement across in Wairoa and in Porongahau, and also community liaison, which we see would be mana whenua across the rest of the projects. So dedicated.
Probably just in summary would be, we look forward to hearing any feedback from this committee, and yeah, koera, tēnā koutou.
Thank you there, TK. Appreciate that we did have the opportunity in our earlier wānanga to touch on this, but the report is provided in a bit more detail. So really appreciate the work that the team has put into providing that information, and we do take the point that there's quite a bit of consultation to come. With that, can I go to Māori Apatu?
Yeah, no, thanks for that update too as well. Just a couple of things I note here too as well. I guess, and this is in reflection to the cultural values assessment on the Ngaruroro. There's been quite a lot of commission work that's been provided to that process. I'm sure that, you know, you've got those reports, hapu management reports. I'm sure that they'll contribute towards this too as well. Yeah, so who's taking the lead on the for cultural impact? Just curious in terms of Ngāti Hori, Ngāti Hāwe for the Pākowhai space. You make mention you've got a lead in there. Is there any way, and secondly too as well, I no doubt when these are completed, these will be available, and I'm expecting that there will be an interface in this process about cobbling together, you know, the various parts that make up the cultural impact assessment, including the touch point of various people, their knowledge base and their knowledge share. So just curious who's doing this for the space. Yeah.
Ka pai, kia ora, Māori. We had an initial meeting with Howie Maguire, Ngahiwi Tumana, Tuira Henderson, Tihira Henderson, and Chair Tariha. Yep. And so there was an initial rōpū that we kind of got around the table and said, fine, okay, yeah. What's the best approach to this in undertaking these CIAs? And then so at the moment we're working with Tuira around the delivery of the CIA.
Cool.
Tahira.
Tihira. Sorry, Tihira Henderson we met with. Initially the group that we met with was Tihira, but Tuira is the one.
Kia ora. Māore's progeny.
Right one,
Any other questions?
Yeah, we're ready to go. I bought the plans for today.
Here we have the money.
Hey, you got the money, I got the map and everything. We're ready to go, brother. Send the team out.
Any further questions?
Aye. Kia ora, Mike. Tani te mihi, kia koutou, te kaha, John Shearer. I read this report the other day, and I saw the pump station upgrades. So earlier this year, when we had our hui with our managers, and we spoke to Chris about pump sheds. And then he informed me that these pumps were commissioned way back in the 50s. So is $30,000 going to do it? No, I don't think so. But anyway, that's only 2 pump sheds I talked about, the one down Farndon Road and the one over at Muddy Creek. That's for Whakatū and back towards Clive. That caters for those areas. My understanding about the pump station, it helps to get rid of the water, the surface water that flows in our drains. But when the river gets to a certain level, it shuts down. So if that's the case, I've heard of a bubble up system where the water's forced out and it bubbles up, and so it never stops flowing into that river, if you know what I mean. So I hope that's what you guys are looking at, and our managers, of course. So that was one issue that I had concerns early in the year, and we've had a talk about that at this hui. So kia ora.
Kia ora. If I could just touch on a few points there, Api, with the pump station upgrades that we refer to in this program, they are in Pakawhai, Brookfields and Awatoto, so they don't go near the 2 that you've mentioned. These are upgrades in terms of level of service, but also resilience. And the Pakawhai upgrade is primarily about resilience. They don't tend to work when they're under 6 metres of water, obviously, but we would like them to. So that will be a big focus going forward, and they will look at issues such as the pressure that a full river creates against the pumped flow. And it's more than likely that those pump station upgrades will go over the stop bank as opposed to beneath or through the stop bank, which will probably more than address that issue. But happy to bring back any information on that as we progress. That work is very much at the start of the process, so we've just developed up what the technical requirements of the design might be, and we're in the process of procuring a design build contractor for that work.
Got it.
Councillor Ormsby.
Sorry, just to share with the pump stations, one of the key features is fish passage. So a lot of the traditional pump stations, unfortunately, fish get put through the pumps and don't make it out the other side, where a key feature of these pump stations is that we've got fish passage to allow for safe passage between the stream and the river in these cases.
Let's turn into a white bait net.
Kia ora, tēnā koe Chair. Thanks to the team for bringing this paper in front of us, and it's encouraging that the approaches to marae and hapu that are directly impacted in these Category 2 areas. My pātai is how significant are undergoing these MOUs, CIAs, cultural values assessments in the process of being able to deliver the projects to their entirety. So what phase and what importance in the process does this have? And we know there is importance, but it's understanding the staging of project completion in regards to this mahi. Yeah.
First crack at that, or shall I go?
I'll first crack. So it's really important that we get CIAs and MOUs in the earlier stages as we can of the project, because that helps guide the design, the tikanga and kawa, if that's been outlined in CIA, and then working closely with mana whenua and mana whenua working alongside the project team to help inform decisions as we move forward. But of course, the challenge at the moment is that we're on tight timeframes and running in parallel with that. So it's really important. The sooner in the project we can get our CIAs and MOUs completed, the better for those reasons before. But it's also balancing the timeframes that we're working with.
And I guess that's the investment of number of kaimahi, engaging, resourcing the people we work with, and making sure that their needs are met along a tight time frame. So, yeah, kia ora.
Kia ora. If I could just add to that, certainly the capacity within the Māori partners that we're engaging with is quite critical to the timeframes, and we absolutely recognise that there's a lot going on in the engagement space, and that some of the entities are a wee bit stretched in that regard. So we're just working as best we can with our partners to move it forward. Obviously, with regard to the Niwi program, we have a lot of pressure from on high to move these forward as quickly as possible. All of those projects in the Niwi space are running, we have multiple tasks running in parallel. The view is still to incorporate the outcomes and the outputs of those cultural impact assessments into the project as best possible. It's probably worth touching on the cultural values assessments. Those are, we're looking at all of River in those regard, and they're not specifically designed to inform individual projects, but that's about improving the cultural knowledge within the capital delivery team, but also the wider organisation with regard to the value that those rivers present to Māori and that general area. They would then help to feed cultural impact assessments in future that would be about specific projects. So we're kind of looking at the here and now with projects, but also taking a longer term view to better inform ourselves moving forward, so that before we even start a project, we have a more rounded awareness of what's important to Māori.
Councillor Hawke?
Kia ora tātou. He tuna mangu tēnei, he tuna wharu no te awa taure kaitai. Nō reira, tēnei au ka mihi atu, tuatahi nei kia koutou, mō koutou mahi ki te whakahokia mai i ngā āhuatanga ko kite nei e koutou, te hononga atu ki ngā marae, ki ngā hapu a hāharani. Ka aru atu au ki tēnei whārangi te kaumā ono ki te atu te hapu, te marae, ka heke mai nei au ki rongo marae, ngā tikere hapu, ara, te wāhitonga o te kūpinga a te huki, me te whakaaro nui ake au. Ko tēnei te wāhanga me ki o te hekinga mai o ngā inganga, o ngā inanga i tēnei wāhanga o te tau. Ara atu ana, ko tā koe ki atu ki a koe kia koutou. Hara mai, tikina mai i au ki te tautoko i a koutou i tā koutou taki hiko i haere ki roto i tau arohe o ngā tikere.
Kia ora, kia ora.
Tātu mea rā, tēnei wahanga o te tau, it's white baiting season, we're creeping into that space, and this time of the year is probably the opportunity to grasp some of the richest information, intergenerational information from our kahui kaumātua that have been relying on that mātauranga Māori over spans of generations. And so this is the time of the year where we once again hono to our awa in such a way that that becomes te kāinga rua, te kāinga tahi, aharani. So relating to the CIA space or the cultural values assessment, there's I'm just kind of understanding that there's probably that space is already spoken for, but just to lay into further information to give an update post the cyclone, now is probably the time to gain a little bit more insight into the way and the behaviours and attitude of our awa taure kaitai. And Uncle Paora and the rest of the kahui kaumātua, my dad and the likes, they are kahui kaumātua of that awa, and will give you some real deep and rich information just from that taki hikoi haere taua awa tēnā wā. And I guess that goes to say with all of our awa across the rohe, and they'll give you I guess enough information to say this is where we were this is where we are now. Last year was probably a little bit too early to give an indication of where things are, but I imagine things are settled down now And so our whānau will be back on that awa and bonding in a way of being able to provide for whānau. Kia ora
Ka
tātou.
pai. Can I suggest you also bring some bread and butter in a frying pan? Any? Aye.
With regards to our very upset whanaunga Kataraina this morning, how will that distress that she had this morning, how will that be addressed here? And what we're reading this morning, with the wairoa and the engagement and the discussions and.
Ka pai. Good question. Takaha, can I come to you? 'Cause you were present for her kōrero. So rather than lay that all out, because you've heard it, I suppose it really is her question around the quality of the engagement. Hey, it's the quality of that engagement that she was really looking for. I'll let you give the opportunity just to respond.
Ka pai, I'll try best to answer that pātai. So I think at the core is around the decision-making and the co-governance and the mātauranga associated with the mahi going forward. And then, like you say, Mike, who's in that kōrero? I guess the MOU or the kind of tools that we've tried to wrap around these projects with our MOU is that we do have that aropu sitting at the table that is resourced for capability and to support the decision-making as part of the project. And at the moment, the tripartite aropu, which is tātou o te Wairoa, HBRC and Wairoa District Council is kind of the key rōpū that we're working with. So that's tātou o te Wairoa's
And could I also suggest what Councillor Hokianga just spoke about, actually getting down to the river, getting down to the oa, and those that actually, if you like, base their lives around that oa. I think that was a big part of her kōrero this morning, is making sure that we capture that particular group. Yeah.
It's just a shame she's not.
Yeah. Kia ora. At least you have had the opportunity to hear it. You heard it this morning? Yes.
I think we can take that feedback back and have a chat with the team and how we can expand our kōrero.
Ka pai. Thank you. Any other pātai? So we'll move, thank you very much. We'll actually receive and remove the reports, the three reports together. We do with item 7. So on behalf of the team, on behalf of us, the committee, to you, John, Sarah, and of course to you, Te Kaha, ka mihi kia koutou, mō koutou whiriwhiri kōrero he pānga ki tēnei kaupapa. He kaupapa tino hirahira ki a tātou whānau whānui o te mātawa Māori. Nō reira, tēnei te mihi, tēnei te mihi, tēnei te mihi. Kia ora koutou.
Tēnā koe, tēnā koutou. Kia ora.
We come to item 7, statutory advocacy and resource management reform updates. Gavin, is that you, Gavin? Aye. Kia ora, Gavin.
This paper is one of the regular reports that you would have seen on previous Māori committee agendas. This particular edition, though, does take a bit of a new look. We're trialling it, and for starters, the team would really love to hear your feedback on whether this particular format hits the mark, could be even better, or misses it completely and we go back to how it used to be. Hopefully not the latter. So this particular edition, like previous ones, touches on everything that's sort of coming across our desks in terms of resource management, reform, local resource consent applications that we do not process, but are processed by the city and district councils that we may have an opportunity to comment on. What else is in there? COVID fast track consent applications as well. On that one, the COVID fast track consent application that is still being worked through was the Marae Kakaho Quarry. There's an application by some trustees for a large-scale quarry on the edges of the Narara River. An expert consenting panel has decided to grant consents for that quarry. And as of this morning, I've received confirmation that a collective of Hiratonga Marae have lodged an appeal against that decision to the High Court, and perhaps Māori could speak to that if there's any questions to that. Other than that, look, I'm happy to take the paper as read and respond to any questions that members might have around what's
So we'll deal with that first part of your kōrero with regards to the gravel extraction and the around ngā marae, ngā hapu.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess this has been a serious kind of application that our marae and hapu, the 14 marae and hapu, undertook hui hapu at the beginning of this year. What the EPA recognised in the panellists in its decisioning was of the lack of first-hand communication right at the very front end. Given the cultural sensitivity of this particular area and taking on board the fact that there was already a very clear footprint of operators that were in the vicinity, that in itself had created a lesser impact in terms of our cultural values and uses to that particular space. What we were able to analyse with our own experts was, of course, there was still a limit of scientific evidence and, of course, a lot of uncertainty. I'd been involved with a number of mediation technical experts, which isolated the conversation down to both ecological and hydrological issues. What really surprised me was when I was online, I had Shade Smith, was the fact that the applicants' technicians, the EPA's independent technicians hadn't even visited the site. So they undertook their initial assessments based on desktop in front of the computer. And then that sort of, really started to focus in on the fact that fast-track legislation that's currently is an enabling process that enables, of course, operations of this scale and impact to be given effect. Okay, bringing it forward from the initial huia hapu that was rejected in its entirety. The process, as Gavin alluded, provided, of course, in their decisioning a set of draft conditions, very comprehensive in terms of the relationship that they were, I guess, trying to sew back to mana whenua, had been related by way of a couple of conditions in terms of the placing or setting up of a kaitiaki liaison body, upon which I think the Regional Council has a really important role in terms of that particular process as part of the draft conditions being signed off. So we have a very complex situation here where our PSG, of course, when the nominations for a representative from iwi, which was put to both Ngāti Kahungunu iwi, Te Taiwhena o Here Taunga, and of course Tamati Pōkai Whenua, one of our own whānau was representing Here Taunga, which of course then was an approval to that final decision, did not dissent, and in the 142-page minute, the breakdown, of course, on what Commissioner panellists said what, these sorts of things then start to pick up that one. There was a very clear mandate from the 14 marae hapu of Here Taunga to oppose, to reject this application in its entirety, that we did not want to, and if we were to participate in the draft conditions, then you would be complicit to approval. So we're stuck in this paradigm. Tomorrow night we've called a special hui because just last night The last day, as part of the High Court notifications and response, had meant that 140 people were sent notices, including Hawke's Bay Regional Council, along with ministers and other various parties. Therefore, I think the key things here is look, we had no choice. And if there was a choice, we're doing what we're doing. We've been to the Environment Court 3 times. We're sitting across in terms of the appeals that are going through. We've completed the OWB. We're in the middle of tank. So, you know, you've got to grab the short and curlies here, because if we're talking about care and protection of our taonga, and this is a taonga, our whakapapa, our relationship to the ecosystem, then we've got no choice. We have to take this on. And so that's been the position that's been clearly the voice of our marae and hapu. And we've got to work through this process. We've only got a month. There's a pre-hearing that's been set up for the 3rd of October. And of course, the discussion needs to show leadership in amongst all of the contributing bodies, which are, of course, the tai whenua, the mana of the marae, PSGE's tamatia pōkai whenua, in terms of being accountable, being transparent insofar as keeping our people together. As I made comment this morning about the strength of coming together collectively. And this is an example where we've got this complexity that's befalling us. So in the next month, we've got no money. This is it. We said that to the High Court. We've got no legal representation, but we've got ourselves and the voice upon which we stand, which is to uphold our values, our interests, our taonga in regards to this particular activity. Now, on the flip side of all of this, not against tūpore and marae kākoho, we're just against the location upon which they're going to dig a very deep hole, nearly 80 feet, next to the Ngaruroro Awa, which is going to have a drawdown into that particular hole. It's going to be in the space of the recharge, which, of course, the science has come back, will have no effect. Look, we saw this happen when the Campbell-Bacta incident went down. We advised the district council that's not a good place to put that well. And of course, we advised them, you better move that well in the space of 10 years back over to Whakatū. And of course, what happened, 2016 or where it was, a year after, this is what happened. The biggest impact on our community in terms of those that got unwell and contributed to 4 deaths. So this is no choice in terms of what our taonga is going to be going through and the decision of our people in terms of the steer, the guidance and the direction that I hope tomorrow I will get some clarity on. But like I say, it doesn't come without high risk and exposure, and I'm very much aware of it. Secondly, we have got, and it must have been accepted, because we scoured through, we had a comprehensive CAR report that identified points of law, and of course, we've just had to waddle in there ourselves based on our own hand on heart, sifting through the science and coming up with the points of law. So this is all going to be tested over the next wee while. Whether we enter into as a part of the pre-hearing or whether we withdraw, that's still up in the air. But it gives our time, ourselves time to hui and to hui a iwi. So that's my update.
Kia ora, thank you for that, Māori. I'll just make a comment on regards to the I think Kappa breakout. As you said, as mana whenua, we had recommended for 10 years that either well was either moved or closed down. The fact that we were ignored, the contamination took place. This has cost the country billions of dollars. You know, and that's just simply overlooking the general mātauranga that mana whenua do have, and that it is worthy to take note of. And as Māori said, we're not opposed to what is being planned in regards to the to the take. It's where it's happening. We do believe that there is a danger to the confined aquifer, and just moving it either just down the river a couple of k's or even across the river would actually eliminate such concern of mana whenua. So we're not opposed to the fast track. It's really around that consultation. So we look forward to where that all goes, Gavin, and we'll see what happens. So with that, were there any further questions in regards to what's contained in regards to the statutory requirements in here? And then we'll come back to your question in regards to, are we happy with the change to the framework? Any other questions around the statutory obligations? Advisory, yep. No?
Yeah, can I ask Gavin? I want to hear Gavin's answer to.
It's really, it's a bigger one, not just for council, that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Henare?
I just wanted to comment on when you look at reports like this, it is important that we get these, that we see these types of things. But when you see the fast track approvals bill, that's when you get to see that the council being caught between a rock and a hard place, despite all the objections, all the submissions against that bill. You know, we get a synopsis and you get what's occurring, but it doesn't sort of break down the sort of like the degree of animus towards that bill, or the objections toward it, or some of the submissions that the issues that some people had with that bill. It's my only comment on this, that it gives you kind of like a vanilla picture of these different things that are occurring. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If there's no further ones, so in regards to the framework, any feedback for Gavin around the change of framework?
Digest.
So it's still in a bit of a trial phase at this stage, Gavin? There's room for more comment later on, once we get a...
Too heavy, too light. You could fill your boots and click on the links and go into heaps and heaps of further information if anyone wishes.
Idea was also to try and align it with some of the notifications that were coming out of Māori partnerships as well, to try and have a bit of a unified approach to it, so that you can pick these things up and understand them easily.
So I'd say the initial feedback, Gavin, is that we're very supportive. We can see the effort that's gone into it and the reasoning behind it. And we hope we can offer a bit more in-depth feedback as we become more accustomed to it. Kia te pai tērā. All right with that. So, Gavin, thank you on behalf of the committee. Thank you very much. We appreciate the effort that's been gone into this. Now we need to be able to receive and note the three last reports. That's item 5, 6 and 7. Thank you, Polder. Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Lambert. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Carried. That takes us up to item 8. And of course, I'll hand over to you, Councillor.
Kia ora, Chair. Dr Nick Peters on a well-deserved holiday, probably fly fishing in Tongariro somewhere. But since we last met 2 weeks ago, obviously a lot has gone on. But I will start with the honoured turnout to Kingi Tūheitia's tangi on behalf of Ngāti Kahungunu on Monday. The bus loads that went representing this council was myself, Thompson, Charlie, Te Wairama, and Trevor from Wairo and Te Kaha. So we were there to honour the Kingi and his whānau, and we look forward to hearing the news on Thursday of who will take his place. A week ago on Wednesday, we had the Hawke's Bay Regional Council meeting. We brought forward the recommendations from this committee around the Māori constituencies and the bill that was proposed by government that was unanimously supported to retain our Māori constituencies that will take us to the binding referendum this elections. We also resolved to support local government NZ in the stance they're taking, the different avenues they're seeking in terms of entrenching Māori constituencies in wards across the country. So we will join our local government New Zealand colleagues in investigating those avenues. We also decided on the implementation of the Hawke's Bay Independent Flood Review recommendations. So there were 47 of those. Many we have started and got underway. I'm just pulling up the paper, aroha mai. And we've instructed Nick to go away and start investigating the next urgent for that look around awareness and flood protection, safety and risk for our communities. We also received the coastal hazards strategy that the Joint Committee has been working on for years alongside the community panels around what are the solutions for coastal hazard risk and solutions. So what we'll do is take that mahi on, workshop how we're going to engage and consult with the community on those solutions. The other items of significance were also our CE review. So that was a big day for us on Wednesday, and for all of those who attended, tēnā koutou katoa, thank you for the support that you showed the council in our decision around Māori constituencies. I think that's probably enough for now. Kia ora.
Kia pai. So thank you for that, Councillor Ormsby. So is there any questions for Councillor Ormsby in regards to the chairman of Hawke's Bay RPC? RPC? No, RC.
Kia kaharawe.
Wai, tēnā koe te hiamana. I think it's probably timely that I pass on this message from what has been, I guess, an over-colourful response to our whānau whiro or the gang's presence here in our chambers. Me pēnei rā te kōrero kei te rangatira. E hara tēnei taku hia ki te kohu i te wai pēnei nā i te pātiki. I do not wish to murk up the waters so that the pātiki can be caught. After seeing negative feedback on the presence of the mongrel mob at the recent Hawke's Bay Regional Council public meeting, I think that it is right to give a response and share my perspective to hopefully clear up some assumptions and misinformation. This is from one of the leaders of the mongrel mob. This has been fueled by recent media coverage by this coalition government, and people have jumped on the hype of the media and listened to the comments of a few people on Facebook. In reality, there are only a small group of people saying very unhelpful things. Let me be clear that the intention of the members that were present at the public meeting was to support the kaupapa of Māori ward decision. We are ratepayers, we are from various marae, we belong to community organisations serving our region. It is unfortunate that our presence and the wearing of our regalia has overshadowed the kaupapa of keeping the Māori ward seats. Prior to the introduction of these seats, no one engaged in gang whānau to understand our views as ratepayers. It was not our intention to bring negativity by coming to the public meeting. In fact, we felt everything about it was right. The wearing of our regalia wasn't to disrespect the tikanga of Māori wards to preserve our own tikanga. We felt that we deserved to celebrate and participate like anyone else. We now recognise that the wearing of our regalia caused deep stirring of uneasiness, unrest. However, we were grateful not to be treated differently to everybody else. We behaved like any other citizen did on the day, and now we feel we are being victimised for our presence and our support of a positive kaupapa for our region. We may not have been fully aware and informed of any local government laws, but we are willing to work on it to further support Hawke's Bay Regional Council's ongoing efforts to maintain Māori ward seats. I think it is unfair that the regional councillors and their staff are at the centre of the public backlash. Regarding the law that prohibits gang regalia in a government building, We welcome that discussion, not just with local government, but central government as well. We didn't know, as we've never felt welcome in any government building with or without our regalia. No one has spoken to us about these laws. No one. What is the law? Where does this apply? How is this enforced? Our police force doesn't even know how to do this successfully. It hasn't been very clear, and we want to ensure that our whānau and our mohopuna are safe and not subjected to media megalomania weaponising the law against our people. We stayed for the Māori ward decision. We were respectful and we left without incident or fuss. There was mutual respect in the room on this day, and that should have been the story.
Kia ora. Kia ora.
Good leader.
So thank you for sharing that with us, Thompson. We look forward to seeing that spread wide and far. He mihi ki a tātou whānau whiro. Not only for their response, but also for their presence on that day. I think if anybody felt intimidated that day, they did, given coming into this environment that they did, especially in regards to our dress standards. It's not an environment that they're used to coming into, but they, as they said, they conducted themselves as rangatira on that day, and they added to the colour of the decision, and more importantly, the celebration of the decision that was made by our council and councillors. So, ka mihi kia rātou. Was there any further comment in regards to the Chair's report? If not, I note we just have our tai whenua reports, and we also have lunch at 1 o'clock. So with that, can I start over here with Tomatea?
Do it, mate.
8 minutes.
Go.
Just an update to say that
Can we use the mic, please? Can we use the mic, please?
where is this? Sorry,
Holden's hogging it.
hogging it. We've held our AGM of recent. Kia ora, thank you. Thompson was at our AGM. Kia ora, thank you, Thompson, for supporting our AGM. It's business as usual in Tamatea. But probably of note, this week we have been in environmental court with Hawke's Bay Regional Council as a supporting party to the Tranche 2 water application take, which has actually now been adjourned because the judge got sick yesterday. So we were hoping for an outcome at the end of the week, but it's going to be dragged out for another month or so, which is unfortunate because it has been 10 years in the court. So that's just a bit unfortunate there. Yeah, but that's where we'll leave it for us today.
Kia ora tātou. I seem to be on the marae for the last couple of weeks with tangianga at the Purangahau. Seems never ending. But in the hearts and minds of Purangahau is everything that Regional Council is proposing out there. Want to get on with it, or if it's going to happen, or we need something positive. Maybe I'll leave it at that.
Oh, thank you, Phil. Tawairo?
Just a comment in relation to a workshop this morning, Mr. Chair, in relation to how the Māori Partnership Group, how they can work in with their different takiwa. I just want to make comment on the huge amount of work that Nathan participates in especially in Nuhaka. If anything, Nuhaka tends to take advantage of Nathan's good graces.
Kia ora rākau pāra.
He's had to the team. And yeah, I feel for him actually, and he's his work has been invaluable. So I have nothing but praise for his work and what he's trying to do. I actually, after giving his presentation this morning, I understand what he's trying to achieve, and that he wants to become part of operational. And I think he's doing that because our kahui calls on him quite a lot. So I want to put in a good word for Nathan, as well as and his counterpart in the district wide or district council, Dwayne. Both are used frequently in Nuhaka. So I've got enough praise for them. Also in relation to Katarina Kawana and her concerns. I think as long as the lines of communication remain open, I think we have a chance of perhaps allaying some of those concerns. I'm hopeful of that anyway.
Kia ora.
Kia ora tata.
Kia ora. Paula? Paul, did you want to add anything?
Kānunu Executive continues to supply and support for tangata whenua in terms of medical, housing and well-being. So we're active in that space. That's ongoing. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Peter Tanga?
Just to add on two items, Mr. Chairman, and to the committee, this is in regards to a collaboration that we've got going with the Hastings District Council around marae preparedness in emergency management responses. I think this is really, really important, and of course I know, and I'm only making mention of it here because of this council's, role back at that local authority level too as well. But what was important for us, because as a lead-in prior to Gabriel, we undertook this emergency marae hapu planning, both in a collective sense, and now we're trying to get it down to an individual. We've got all of that great experience that's around us, particularly from Omahu, and taking, of course, the insights from our other whānau from Tangoio, Motio, and Waiohiki. So there's that process, and we're lucky that, I guess in the organisation we have this thing called SIMS, like every organisation, crisis management systems, and I understand that the Hastings version of hubs has been modelled on a SIMS but numbed down to a marae level, so that's really important. The good thing about it is that this has gone out to the wider community. Of course, it's only affecting the Hastings District Council boundary within the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. What is really, really important, we're open to that collaboration of making sure that we train people, training the trainer, to train the trainers, and then to go out and train the whānau. So look forward to that kind of being progressed. Second thing is we've got a science wānanga in collaboration with Otago University on an annual yearly basis. Our three key focus areas will be on air quality, environment, on the kaupapa theme of Pūria nei, to cleanse and renew. Blink and heck, we had 40 school kids, year 9, 10, and we didn't know that they were just informed a week ago that they've got a numeracy literacy assessment that's happening to all the high schools next week. And so we've had withdrawals from the schools in lieu of that priority, which is disappointing. So I'm a little bit up in the air at the moment in terms of if it's all go or not, but just to say it would have been held and staged at Omahu Marae. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Anna, did you want to add?
Just noting there on the 14th of September, there's a huia hapu ki Here Taunga. So that'll be hosted at Takarangi Conference Room, and that's in regards to Waitangi and Te Aki Tai Marae, looking to come on board with the Te Haro Governance Board. So.
Sure, that's all right.
I get to see you more often, that's why. But
Kia ora.
me.
Whakani a roti.
Mauri ora tātou. This morning I brought up a take concerning water rates. Water rates to horticulture, viticulture, cropping users. I've received my, my water rate bill, and it looks like it's gone up nearly 500%. So if that's true, I asked that question, and I'm sort of listening to Māori's kōrero about the aquifer and all that. So, you know, we know that no one owns the water, so who controls the aquifer? Does this regional council have a tap up there? They turn it on, perhaps? So how can the regional council justify that charge going out to our users? So that's my main concern, because then I want to know exactly what does the regional council do in regards to our aquifer.
We're going to get an answer.
Trent, you're gonna tell us that Councillor Foley's got the tap? He's got the tap.
He's got the answers. Ask him. Through you, Chair, I believe what you're talking about, RP, is the Section 32 science charges. So the Regional Council does not charge for the taking or the use of water, but what the council does do is take and charge for Section 32 charges under the Resource Management Act to monitor science monitoring of water takes and discharges. So if you want to have a chat about that, I'm more than happy to do that on a case-by-case basis.
Aye. Yes, Mataranga Pākehā versus Mataranga Māori there. Aye. Okay, no, thank you for that. Understood, yeah.
Yeah, it contributes to the state of the environment monitoring report that the council's required to prepare.
And yeah, short and sweet. And finally, our tuma whakarai, Matt has sent out a pānui to one and all to come along to the special hui pōpō tomorrow over here at the Napier City Council to support their councillors for Māori wards. So
that's here.
That's here.
That's here.
Oh, aroha mai. Oh, okay, here, kei konei. So I'm not too sure if we're going to stage a haka.
Oi, the haka, we got the full stop. Black sign on.
Can I just come to Wairama for our final, before we get there, can I have a mover and a seconder to receive the verbal reports, please?
Could I just throw one thing in, please, Mike? I want to, Thompson was alluding to on our wawa out at Tauri Kaitai. If I'm just trying to kaha, the kahui ko mātua have a breakfast every Monday. Starts at 9 o'clock and everyone is welcome. So if you want to come for a kai, and we usually talk to about 2 in the afternoon. We cover many subjects, and I'm sure we can fit the awa, the white bait, the kahawai, and everything about the Porangahau River.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, mover, holder.
Yes.
Second Api, thank you to receive the verbal reports. All right, agenda 18.9. Finally, can I come to Wairama?
Wasira, thank you, Chair. Kia koutou tēnei komiti, tēnei au e tuku mihi atu kia koutou katoa. Mō ngā pūkenga, ngā wawata, ngā kōrero, kua ta haina e koutou ki runga i a mātou, o te kaunihia, nō reira, tēnā rā koutou katoa. I just wanted to introduce one person before we go to lunch, and I'm not sure if he realises that I am going to introduce him, but Matt Boggs has joined us as the Director of Implementation for the CDM review, and I've invited Matt to have lunch with us and just start meeting some of the members of this committee. But Matt and I will spend some time together over the coming week or so just to lay out a plan of who and how we'll start building relationships. Matt, did you want to talk at all? Probably 20 seconds.
I'm between you and lunch. I look forward to catching up with all and every one of you over the next 9 months. There's a lot of chat and engagement going on. I'm going to have to put myself in there as it regards to emergency management. I know you all care about that immensely. I'm an informal kind of guy, so I think you're going to find me doing it outside of these chambers and doing it more on a face-to-face if that suits. So I look forward to meeting you all over the next coming months.
Are we able to make matters part of our agenda items for our next, yeah, it'll be interesting, give you the opportunity to
I'd love to have the opportunity to talk about where we're going. We've got a committed emergency management team that want to be better and do better. So yeah, it'd be a great chance to have you out there.
Oh boy, I think that must be the thing, ringa wera that was ringing to tell us to hurry up.
Chair, can I just add the genesis of welcoming Matt is his position is born out of the Hawke's Bay CDM review, independent review, commissioned by the Joint CDM Committee. And there were a number of recommendations that came out of that, but also a need for implementation, particularly with our community and with mana whenua. So that's why we've brought Matt into our fold from the Army, a very decorative and successful Army career. So, you know, many of our whānau, we have a whānau member or a friend who's been in the Army, so Matt's probably come across him at one stage or another. But we chose him because of his connections to community and the work that he has done, knowing that we want a bottom-up approach to civil defence management and preparedness for our communities. So we invite him, we thank him for taking the position, and we look forward to him working amongst us. Kia ora.
Yeah, no mai mai. Ka mea ki a koutou mō koutou, kōrero he whakaaro rangatiri takatoi I runga tātou tēpu I tēnei rā. Tēnei wā ka hurita rākau ki a koe api he whakakapi a tātou kōrero. Tātou hui unga. Whakakapi.
And do a human in first?
Right.
Oh, it's got the music.
Yep.
Before tātou, whakaari mai.
Te ata kaua kaharawa. We give thanks to the many blessings that have enabled this hui today by bringing together the Hawke's Bay Regional Council Māori Committee, along with our respective councillors and staff. We also pray and extend our condolences to those that have passed on. Our whānau in Porangahau, i te rata wiki hine rapa. Our whānau that's lain in Mahia, Pōki Maru. And of course, as we grieve the sorrow and loss of Kingi Tuheitia. Nō reira, kia tātou katoa. Te ata whai o tō tātou are ki a ihu karaiti. Me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahutanga ki te wairua tapu. Ake, 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 āmene, kia ore.